to start, I know that you are yourself so talented, and you've been on Broadway, and so I have to imagine I have to imagine musicals are a big thing for you. Is that true?
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, I guess if we had to line me up with everyone in the world, I would definitely be more towards the theater queen side of the spectrum. That being said, I felt very outmatched when I felt very outmatched in many situations. And so we'll see.
Well, I mean, and truly, this is all just, from your life and your personal experience. It's just
Yeah.
whatever has spoken to you and speaks to you still is like what I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested in. So, I mean, is there
Nice.
an early musical maybe that you felt really drawn to?
I would say the thing that I love the most about musicals is more the glitz and glam and production of it. And so old MGM Hollywood musical era is what I'm most attracted to. I didn't have the opportunity to sit and watch, I guess I'm of the age bracket that Broadway was not something I was doing when I was 10 years old. And so the only exposure that I really had to it was occasionally maybe like a performance on the Tonys or whatever filtered through with my mom. So I was kind of sheltered from Broadway at large until I made the conscious decision to jump into it. So that being said, the things that really made their way through to me weren't necessarily traditional Broadway musicals, but definitely more the musical style of things and sort of like the way things were staged, the bright colors, the brightness of, there was a trend, certainly a trend in musicals where everything was just like major chords and extremely happy sounding music. And so I was really drawn to that. And so I'd say from a very early age, like less than 10 years old, younger than 10 years old, but probably the first two moments that I was like, I'd say three moments. Three moments that I was like, oh my gosh. Definitely one of them was Madonna Material Girl, which is obviously a take from Marilyn Monroe. I would say the other was definitely The Wiz, the movie The Wiz, which is obviously from the Broadway show, but I didn't know that there was such a thing at the time, but I was in love with The Wiz. Even more than The Wizard of Oz, because The Wiz had sort of a darkness and a cityness to it, like part of it takes place in the city, that just felt so real. I'd never been to a farm in Kansas. And so I guess the things that I love about the musicals were things that I identified with or wanted to identify with. And then the moment that I knew that like musicals in general and people singing and girls wearing certain outfits was the Kate Capshaw scene in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom when she opened with Anything Goes. And I was like, it was like beautiful. It was so choreographed and so corny and so perfect. And I was like, this is very real. So
That's amazing. I love that it's such a specific part of that movie. I mean, I remember that scene, but is she wearing like a Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend Material Girl outfit kind of?
no, she's actually wearing something that would probably not fly over very well today.
Oh no.
An Asian inspired outfit. It's a Mandarin collar dress, and they're in China. I believe they're in China. And so all of the showgirls are Chinese showgirls. And and so that's the scene. They're in a Chinese restaurant. So it's just like a little dinner theater moment in the movie, and it's the opening. So it's like before anything starts, before there's anything, you see Kate. She's the first person you see, and she's singing, and they're tap dancing, and then they all have these. It's an MGM musical, so like it's a fantasy scene where like it gets all blurry, and then they're in these tuxedos with blonde wigs, and it's like seeing these Chinese women in blonde wigs. I was like, yes, and they're all tap dancing and they have their top hats and like, woo! It's like too much. And they're obviously not in the restaurant anymore, but it's like, oh. And I fell in love with it. And so there was costume changes, and then there was a fight scene at the end, and then Indiana Jones walks in, and that's his entrance to the movie. But the first 10 minutes of the movie is Kate Capshaw singing and dancing and tap dancing and whipping their legs around, and woo! It's just beautiful.
That's so funny. I mean, I always thought Temple of Doom was my favorite, but you're saying this, I'm like, oh, it was the gayest one for sure. Like,
oh, no doubt. No doubt.
That's so funny.
Definitely my entryway to acting musicals was definitely in school. Hold on, my headphones.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. Was definitely community theater and school musicals. And so that was my first sort of foray into the world of actually being in a cast and learning and rehearsing and that whole aspect of theater. And so, yeah, I was pretty kind of sheltered. And then there was a moment in time where musicals, the subject matter of musicals didn't necessarily appeal to me as much as, when I say the subject matter, the different identities that were supported in there were not necessarily as appealing to me as the fact that there were just a multitude of different types of characters in fantasy situations. And I think that that's a theme where a lot of people, especially people who are adults now, who grew up in a situation where their queerness wasn't accepted, obviously that's seen as a sort of an escape that anyone can kind of get into and kind of lose themselves in. And then in the world of theater, it's also, a viable sort of job. And it's something that's sometimes supported by people who don't understand it. They patronize it. They go to buy tickets. Your very heteronormative family will still go to a Broadway show. And so you wanting to be a Broadway performer is definitely a lot more, probably a lot more palatable than you saying that you want to be Wonder Woman.
Right.
I saw it as a safe space in high school. And honestly, it was more of a refuge. So it wasn't necessarily about, we did some really terrible plays in high school that I was like, oh gosh, I really would rather be anywhere but here. But it was certainly better than high school sports or, and being in drama class, a drama club, it was an escape, and it was protection. And it was, even if there weren't other queer kids, because I certainly didn't feel like I was like in some queer, diverse haven in my drama class. It was made up of the same people that went to the school. But it definitely allowed for people to be more open-minded. And I think, if anything, a lot of the people, especially in the high school age, are more kind of self-aware in that setting. If not self-aware, then they're self-conscious and insecure. As high school kids, many are. But a lot of, like, some of the football players and athletes who were in drama were suddenly faced with a situation where their, like, macho-ness and their ability at sports wasn't going to be what got them, what advanced them. What was going to advance them was their ability to be more sensitive and open and observant. And so these are tools that hopefully most adults will learn. But as high schoolers in drama, that was something that we had to key into pretty quickly. And so you can't be focused on teasing someone else when you're up in front of the class and you have to react like you do some part or do some lines do some accent that you're insecure about, and so I think that also was a reason why I felt protected. If not everyone being queer and fabulous, everyone at least being in their own lane and staying in their own lane. Mm-hmm. Madonna is obviously an icon, and I think was sort of all types of symbols, a sex symbol, a rebel symbol, a symbol of youth was. And for so many folks in the country, and a symbol of female empowerment, a symbol of sort of this American spirit of, like, I'm a rambunctious gal. And so I think Madonna resonated with a lot of people in many different ways. And certainly for me as a queer kid and a young trans girl, I saw Madonna as a source of strength and rebellion. And I actually a lot of what she was doing, because in the 80s when I was growing up, like I was around for most of Madonna's career. Um, the it was too sexy for me. Like I even self-admittedly was like, oh, this is too much for me. Like I'm a little uncomfortable. And so, but looking back on it now, I can't say that she hasn't gotten enough praise because she's obviously an everlasting icon in the world of music and pop culture, and for many people, the blueprint. Um, but looking back, it's really great to see. Um, it was nice to see like this rambunctious girl kind of bucking the system, but it was even better to see someone who was clearly mainstream be so outspoken and about social issues that were affecting the gay community and also minority and people of color community that's voting and AIDS and HIV. And so I think in hindsight, that was even more um, influential and more meaningful than we may have even noticed back then. At the time, it just seemed like, oh, Madonna, she's up to her pesky things again, and she's always trying to, make all this noise. But looking back, I actually had a chance to kind of go back, and I'm always fascinated with going back again to sort of relive my history. And so I had the chance to really engage, and I can't tell you how many Blonde Ambition tours I watched on YouTube, because like the concerts are on YouTube. So I saw the different nights. I saw the infamous night in Toronto or in Canada where she was humping the bed and masturbating, and they almost arrested her for public indecency. And this she was up there with two queer men of color wearing bras, lipstick, and heels. The men were, and allowing them to just live their absolute queerness, or providing space. I don't want to say allowing them, but providing space uh, for that. And some people may say that Madonna is the perfect model of someone of cultural appropriation, but and that we can have that conversation. But she definitely is someone who it was a trailblazer and is a trailblazer and was very influential. So there's that moment of Vogue and her with all those gay dancers around her really kind of, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm living. Seeing people that were just more swishy and being celebrated for it and becoming famous, around Madonna. And she was the queen, especially in her realm. And so that was wonderful to see. Also, again, the theater of it all and the drama of it all, I was really attracted to. And I remember there was like that kiss in Truth or Dare, even though the movie had an NC-17 rating, somehow I still saw it. And the the dancers being able to, just, even though there was some controversy around that kiss, and one of the dancers that kissed the other dancer felt a lot of shame and sort of, was really worried about coming out publicly, which is again another issue. That was like an historic moment where we had never seen. And I remember just around the same time, probably a little later than that, on TV, there was all this like attention being drawn, and everybody was anticipating this kiss that was supposed to happen on Melrose Place, which was a 90210 spinoff. And it was like, this kiss was so stupid. It was two guys getting like this close to each other, and then they drew the blinds, and you didn't see what happened. So like, there was no kiss. It was inferred, but like that was what we were being given. That was 2 or 3 years after Madonna and Truth or Dare, and so it was very historic. Uh, and yeah, and so Madonna is queen for a reason. I'd say like some small examples were like Boy George, for obvious reasons. And this, even in an age and a time in the 80s when even men wearing big hair and hairspray and having, probably wearing wigs, and lipstick, was a norm for rock. Boy George definitely stood out to me and resonated with me in a way that I could just connect with that queerness, Also, my absolute favorite, Janet Jackson. And, Janet was for me what I think Madonna was for some other people. And so while I can recognize like the fierceness of Madonna, my queen will always be Janet Jackson. And so she just did it in a way that that really clicked with me. And I can't say that she was necessarily ever as outspoken, especially in crucial times, as Madonna was on certain issues. And, you know, she was, it's so interesting, you know, just now looking at it now, Janet Jackson was punished and sanctioned for doing what Madonna would have done in the 80s, you know, or 90s, you know what I mean? Whatever. So yeah, Janet was definitely someone that I resonated with. I just loved, for the art form of singing and dancing. I just thought that was just definitely my kind of lady. And I'd say somebody who I look back now and realize that they were really kind of formative or influential in a way was definitely Prince. You know, this is someone who is Black, and I obviously connect with that, but who was completely the opposite of, or not the opposite, but inclusive and goes beyond gender norms and sexuality norms, and didn't seem to have any of those hangups. In fact, exploited those hangups in other people, at least artistically. And so, you know, here's the Black man with long hair and wearing ruffles and a blouse. Like that was a blouse. That was not a shirt. That was a blouse. And high heels, wearing heels every single time. Prince wore heels and wearing purple, and not blue, but purple, and singing in this high falsetto voice, and, you know, just doing all of the things that many of us would have gotten beaten up for. And so, and making lots of money, and really gaining the, I think, admiration and adoration of other heterosexual males and men who lived in communities where machismo is sort of a standard norm, where it's a norm. And so yeah, Prince is absolute